Hi, Tyler here, and I just wanted you to know that Douglas and Michael just uploaded another video. It was really good. They're talking about propaganda, and I think you'll find it really interesting because they're going beyond the message of the propaganda, and now they're looking at the networks, the clusters of media that push out the same narrative, right in the same 24 hours, and what that tells us about the enemy. I'm going to leave a sample right here, but if you want to see the full video, you're going to need to go to the description box into the link that I've provided because there were things that the guy said that YouTube would not like to hear. Thanks. Y'all have a great day.
What do you think? I just saw a headline: Putin's got cancer, and his KGB officer head is going to take it over, and he's the guy who's been doing the war anyway in Ukraine. She just burst out laughing and said, uh, "Where did that come from?" And I looked down and I said, "Well, it came from because I don't read the news because I can't find any place where there's any truth. So it's from the what was it, Daily News?" And then she goes,
Daily
"Okay,
Mail.
Daily Mail," and then she burst out laughing. And I said, "Yeah, yeah, they're just fake news, right?" She goes, "Oh, yes." I said, "But I've seen it all over the place. I mean, I have seen it everywhere. There's so many of them. I just ignored all of it because I figured it was propaganda nonsense." But then it showed me a picture of his face, and his face is all
Right.
bloated, and he
I've
looks
seen
horrible.
those. Yes.
Okay, so I say that was my justification to prove that the propaganda I had just looked at had convinced me with a headline that that Putin has cancer and the war is going to a KGB head. So there's no stopping the war now. There's no one that we can appeal to.
Hey, wait. KGB was annihilated in the early 1990s.
That's what the article said. KGB.
All of the newspapers of that era started realizing that they had great power because they could take a message and they could, if you look at those newspapers, what you really are looking at are text messages because these they couldn't push out large messages, large articles at that point. They were doing small snippets, and that looks uncannily like a text message, a series of text messages. And so they started running those. And what they realized is it only took a few text messages to influence the entire country of Britain and America. And so, over from 1850 to 1900, they refined that capability and started comparing notes. And so, by 1902, when the Pilgrim Society started, they realized that one of the things they had to do was seize control of all newspapers. And at that time, that was pre radio. So, it was primarily newspapers all over the world so that they could put out a consistent British Empire message across the world, including our newspapers in the U.S., which cooperated. And now we know it's because J.P. Morgan and Warburg and Andrew Carnegie had bought control of the American newspapers. So our newspapers were falling in line out of this propaganda capability that developed out of London. And at the time of the 1908 Imperial Press Conference, the Reuters, uh, Associated Press, Daily Mail, the Times, the New York Times had people there. They recognized that this was tremendous power. And at that conference, W.T. Stead, who was Cecil Rhodes's biographer, specifically said, and he had written a pamphlet called Government by Journalism. And what he recognized, and we actually have read a number of his works now where he's very clear about this. He realized that his newspapers had more power than the church, and that he was even doing advertisements for various churches and their worship services and things like this. And what he recognized that one article by him was more powerful than all the sermons in the country. Propaganda of this new world order that they were attempting to develop that would federalize the British Empire and make it a corporatist empire and would hide behind the monarch for all their legal liability and would push all of their money through the Bank of England. So they would create fiat currency out of the Bank of England to fund all of these efforts. They then had what they needed to push the media of the last 120 years. So when you talk about what's going on now, I think everybody needs to realize that anytime you see a splash within a 24-hour period and it's quoted, and the source is Reuters, Associated Press, Daily Telegraph, Daily Mail, New York Times, Washington Post, Chicago Tribune, and Los Angeles Times. Whenever you see those as the sources, believe the opposite.
And then you hear the parrots come in and say, as it was stated in this
Right.
source.
They
And
quote
then
each
they
other.
wax poetic after that, and they just add lies. It's like, what did you just sit around and just imagine this stuff in your crazy
Yes,
head?
they
That's what
do.
happens, literally. Now, we know this because why? Take Hearst and Pulitzer and
Mhm.
their battle for yellow journalism, where they literally made a bet to see who could create the bigger war simply by putting it in their newspapers.
Right. Let me point out, when you mentioned Hearst, Randolph Hearst was coached by W.T. Stead, who was the kind of spiritual advisor of the Pilgrim Society and the Empire Press Union. So this idea of government by journalism was completely seized by the British throughout the United States, and Hearst was one of their main proponents.
And we must remember that in our life, how many times have we heard when someone is asked a question during an investigation, what do they say? All I know is what I heard on television. Well, then all you don't know that. Even you, all you do is you're going to now mouth the lies you heard on television to get you out of the trouble. Because why? Those are your cronies. Now let's remember, there's only really 6 big corporations who own most of the news. And who owns them? The same asset managers who own the rest of the Fortune 500 companies. And
Right.
who owns them? Well, those would be the bankers. And who owns them? The same banking families who own all the major big banks doing all the corrupt deals, and the 12 central banks and the U.S. Federal Reserve. It's the same exact families. And
Okay, let's take it up another level. And those are controlled by the Bank of England.
Absolutely. And the Pilgrims control even the monarchy. They control the Privy Council. We know that Pilgrims control the Bank of England, and because of their stupid rules over there, you can't ask about any of the Queen's business or any of the monarch's business. But the Queen owns all the golden shares and all the most corrupt companies, which you have, and your miners have demonstrated again and again, and even recently you found out.
Including Elon Musk's SpaceX.
Which, hello,
which
folks,
is supposed to be American, but it's not. It's British.
What I call the crime line. The staff writers of Americans for Innovation have created, holy Lord, correct me, because I know the number is going to be very small. When I first read it, I read over 6,000 pages in about a week or two so that I could catch up with what they had created as a timeline of the crimes of history that come right into our time and go back. And so you can go there and you can plug it in and you can figure out just anything you want. And then you can do what so many people have done for us. One day someone sent us a cartoon of, I don't know whether it was you, Michael, and myself talking, or whether it was Betsy and myself, but I think it was Betsy and I begin with, this person just out of their heart created the most beautiful animations. Now we get to see you as the Highlander. We get to see you all these different, as a miner in all these different forms.
No, those are pretty good.
I love that person. And then there's another person who does chalk drawings for us, which are like memes. And there's another person, all volunteers. There's people who call you every day. Oh, I hope I don't make your phone ring off the hook even more than it does.
I turned it off.
People call you all the time because they want you to answer questions with them or contact all of our researchers. And the same thing with Betsy. They contact her and say, can you help us? Can you figure this out? So here's the question. Is there going to be a World War III, Michael?
I think it's because the propaganda is so maddening, but I think people are starting to wake up to that maddening element is intentional, and so they want to wade through that and start to get some nuggets of truth, and that's part of the reason for the timeline. I mean, when I started down this path, I didn't know any of this stuff. I was just an entrepreneur trying to build something effective and elegant. And what we've discovered as we unpack that onion is that it was so attractive that our federal government and the British government wanted to steal it. and therefore they played games with us for years. And so it was maddening to us. But as we started putting these jigsaw puzzles together, we started seeing that there was a big agenda here. And now you started this out with the propaganda issues. I never understood how central propaganda was to the agenda of this New World Order crowd, the Pilgrim Society. But they saw it, they knew it from 150 more years ago. And once they realized that they had to seize control of communications to do that, they've been doing that ever since Samuel Morse and Morse code. And it is the banks who seized control of that because they wanted intelligence. If you look at those early newspapers from 1850, 1840, they actually had a whole section called intelligence, where they would give information about what was going on around the country and around the world. And so the idea of intelligence, as we discovered in the 1909 press conference, was well known to them. They knew they had to use intelligence to make sure their banks always win. And therefore they had to take control of it. And then that's when the corporatists with it actually predated Cecil Rhodes, because we see in the 1880s that Edison started General Electric, and it's uncanny how much British influence there was on the formation of General Electric, and why to this day there's a GEC, there's a General Electric Corporation, which came out of England, and that was the company that that assisted the Pilgrim Society in developing and monopolizing so much of communication and also power generation. So they had these mechanisms they knew they had to control, and they have. And propaganda was their way of keeping the mass population in the dark as to what they were really doing. Because we think we have journalism, we have investigative journalists. No, we've got people who are parroting the official line. What we really need is truth history. We need real journalists who will actually dig, and that's what we're attempting to do.
So the solution is to have it a place online so that people around the world, in China and Russia, in Croatia, in all the places that we have friends that work with us, that help you and the miners and help Americans of Innovation, we all work together. We need this place to go the next step. We've taken the big step, and the big step is to get the whole thing in place. Now what we need to do is put it on steroids. We need to
Right.
go the next step. We need to say, we need to involve more people. We need to make sure that this message gets out. We need to do it in a way that is the most effective that can be done. And so we're asking people to help us. We've never asked before. And so we're asking people to help us do this work, which is, in fact, it's not our work and it's not paying us, it's paying the work. And we are going to continue this work. I have said it from day one, 5 years ago. I will continue to do this as an anonymous patriot, was our name then, until my last breath. I met you, and now God has given me a few extra last breaths. So I'm going to keep on doing this. And as long as Tyler keeps telling me, reining me in and making sure that our productions are great, and as long as you keep helping us, I believe we have Truth History Online as one of the most amazing rally points for free speech. You can help.
Yeah, I concur with everything you just said, Douglas. And what is most gratifying is, like you said, the fact that we have so many people all over the world involved in this now. And so now that we're ready to kind of take the next step, we absolutely thank anybody who steps up and provides a contribution. And having raised money in the past for Christian ministries, I know that it's sometimes difficult to sort through where you should put your donor dollars, and a lot of it has to do with what those funds are used for. And I can assure you that anything that is donated to this Give Send Go project will be put to use, and there will be minimal overhead. Uses for overhead, so that we can focus on getting this truth history out and can provide these documents worldwide. And we also ask that for those of you who do follow our links, that you make sure that when you look at a document, you save a local copy. We try to always put these in as PDFs so that if there's ever an attempt to censor us, there will be 50, 100, 500 copies of that same document out, so other people can get to it a different way. And in so doing, we will bypass these censors that we now see everywhere.
So we thank you for your continued support, and we thank you for what we put on the site as you can give us prayers. Believe me, we know for a fact that your prayers have kept us going. We need those prayers. We need your help if you want to see this advance, and we're going to keep doing what we've done. And we hope that we've engendered the trust that you need to believe that we are a good site for truth history. And we now believe this new project is going to make that even more available to you and more convenient in ways that you can't even imagine. So
Amen.
Thank you for all those people who use this as your own curriculum, homeschool curriculum. Thank you for the people who've thanked us for helping them do their own adult education, lifelong learning. And thank you for all the contributions of every sort that you make.
God bless you all.